All righty. Okay, welcome all. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Ballpark and Central 9th Community Council meeting. I'm looking for some Central 9th names. I know a lot of folks were out of town, taking that extra day to make the long weekend extra long. I don't blame you one bit, especially if you're going someplace cooler. But, all right, let's see if I can get this screen share going just for a second, because it's fun. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for participating in the Kensington Street Festival. Oh my gosh, wasn't it amazing? I hope everybody had the pleasure of joining us. That would be awesome. I hear that it was only the first annual Kensington Street Fest. So exciting times for all of us if we start planning the second annual Street Fest. I think according to most people, it was a phenomenal success. Looks like a lot of people having a good time. I think a lot of people were there for 10 hours or some ridiculous amount. And it was wonderful to see. But kudos all around. I said that I was going to give a brief introduction to a new group of strangely familiar neighbors and friends who are starting to organize with a trash pickup group. Jeff Sandstrom, would you like to say a little bit about this? I see somebody there who looks remarkably like you.
We had a lot of fun picking up trash around the area. There was myself, Andrew, Ashley, Brian, Amy, and Josh. And we actually had a good time. We all filled up a couple bags of garbage, and several people thanked us profusely for joining the cause, and even some asked to be added to the list for participants. So it turned out really good. We went down Kensington Avenue, south on Main Street, and then up to Major Street and all along there, because we wanted to make sure that the vicinity of the street fair was as clean and presentable as possible. And then I know Amy and Brian went back and did some more touch up on the actual day of the festival to make sure it looked good. So thanks to everybody. It was well received. And I think we need to also figure out a frequency of doing this again. How often do we want to do it, and what day or what time of day is probably open to discussion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if anybody has any thoughts, feel free to share them in the chat. I think we're going to aim for, since this time seemed to work for some folks, I think we're going to aim for next Thursday at 7 as well. And I have to say, some of the ingredients for success included not only awesome neighbors and participants willing to do this, but you know, Roja Brewing donated their quite sturdy bags to collect the trash. That's not nothing, especially when you're picking up sharps, you know. And also they donated the use of their dumpster for disposing trash. I know that sounds obvious, but like if, you know, we picked up a few more bags later in the week ourselves, and it doesn't work out to keep picking up a bag of trash all every day and, you know, using your own private trash container for it. Our neighborhood produces a little bit more than any one private citizen can handle. So if you are a business owner and you are interested in helping supply neighbors with trash bags and a place to put them after they're full, get in touch. I think it's, you know, we love Roja, but I think we'd be willing to visit other areas of the neighborhood for sure. So just please feel free to get in touch. That is all I have to start with. Detective Fallows. Thank you, Nanette. Thank you. I see that we can use Condi's Candy's dumpster. That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You want me to dive into it?
I would love for you to dive into it. We have a lot to cover, and some of it's pretty positive, I think.
All righty. Well, so we thought, me and Amy kind of talked for this month, and we figured something good to do would be to kind of just highlight some things going on in the neighborhood, give a few updates on some cases of interest. And then, of course, if you've been to one of these before, if you have any questions, please throw it in the chat for me. And I'll get to those when I'm done with my presentation. So we're going to talk about some of the highlights for the ballpark area for some updates. So the first update that we thought would be good to go over would be the loading dock shooting that occurred back on July 3rd. Of course, we haven't had a ballpark meeting for, I think, about a month now because of the Kensington Street Festival. So we'll talk about some things from the previous month as well. So that one, our public relations unit did do an update. And so I was able to find that the suspects have been arrested in that case. So that's good for the neighborhood and good for everybody, really. And so they were able to locate those suspects. They were able to get them arrested. And I think it was the next day, I believe, by our detectives. So they worked super hard throughout that whole Sunday, and were able to make an arrest. Not much more to update on that, other than really like just it's going to move through the court system now at this point. But suspects in that one have been arrested. And then an update that I know a lot of the business owners and this is for anybody really, private or business, for the trespass signs, the no trespass signs that the city offers. Give an update on that. So I spoke to our records division. They're the ones that manage that and order them. I now have a contact that I can contact anytime if anybody wants an update from me, like, hey, when do we get more signs? And so signs will be in mid next week. So maybe Wednesday-ish of next week. They're on order and they should be in mid next week. We all know how things go with with back orders, but as far as I was told, it should be next week. I'm going to put a phone number in the chat for everybody who is interested in a no trespass sign and the trespass affidavit. And you can
just a quick pause, Detective Fallows. Could you remind everybody on this call what the signs and the affidavit allow folks to do? Like what is the advantage of going through the administrative hurdle to get the sign, to deliver the affidavit to the public safety building? Like, that seems like a hassle. Why might it be worth it to some business and property owners in the neighborhood?
Absolutely. So the specific city issued no trespass sign allows us to, as officers, to take action immediately under two circumstances. So number one, if the business owner isn't there, or the property owner, because it can also be a private residence, can also have no trespass signs. So if the property owner is not there and we are happen to driving by, things like that, we see someone on the property. I mean, we all know how it works. A lot of times they're sitting right underneath the no trespass sign. So if that's happening, we have a legal right to be able to go stop that individual, get their information, make an arrest if needed, issue a citation if needed. Sometimes they can be moved along as well. But either way, we can do all those actions without having to even contact the business owner. So that's the first thing that it does. The second thing that it does is, if you are on scene, it allows us to be able to make an arrest or issue a citation without any kind of a prior documented in a report warning, because that sign under our city prosecutor said, this is the sign we want. If that sign's up, they do not have to be given a previous documented warning. You're able to just take immediate action. So it's super helpful. It's not perfect. It doesn't it's not going to mitigate all your problems, but it will help us to be able to have some teeth in the game, to be able to go in, make an arrest if we need to, get names. And a lot of times we can make, warrant arrests, things like that, because now we can have a legal reason to stop that individual and make them give us their information. So without those things, obviously as a police officer, we have to protect everyone's rights. That's first and foremost. So we have to have a reason to be able to talk to someone. And so with this no trespass sign, it gives us that reason without you having to be there. So very helpful. I put the phone number up in the chat. If you'd like to give them a call before you come all the way out here and say, hey, are the signs in yet? You're welcome to do that. Other than that, so the information I have is that they should be here mid next week. And I believe they said there's 140 signs that are being ordered. I think they order them somewhere around that quantity each time they need them. So hopefully, I know I've got a ton of business owners waiting on them. So hopefully, we can get those used up and get another order. So that'd be great. And then the last thing I want to highlight as just kind of a small update that me and Amy talked about is
Oh, wait, Detective Fallows, that's a super relevant question from Josh. Price per sign. I feel like the number of $32 was floating around. Does that sound familiar?
it is going to be around that. I did ask them specifically. I was not given a specific price because I guess the cost of the signs is going up a teeny bit. But as from what I understand, it will be around that. Like it shouldn't be much more or less than that right there, 32-ish dollars. And with that, and so I put a link for the trespass affidavit that needs to be filled out. And just while I have everybody fill that affidavit out, you can get it notarized. If you need help with that, you can bring it in to our police department and they can notarize it for you pretty much anytime they have a notary on. If you want to be super safe and not get turned away because they don't have one on, you can just take it to your bank or whoever. A lot of business owners have notaries usually. So you can do that as well. But just make sure you get it notarized either before you bring it in or before you sign it at the police department, and then they can take care of the rest.
Mark has a question too. He's had a
yeah.
sign for a few years. Does he need a new agreement? Do those agreements
They
stay good?
They do expire, yes, after I think it's 4 years, I
Oh,
want to say. So they can expire, but it's not a big deal. It's literally just simply filling out the affidavit and bringing it back in. So you don't have to get more signs if you have your signs. You just need to just have a current agreement with us. So good question on that one.
yeah, great. Thanks for your question, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Any other questions on no trespass signs before I move on to the next update? I think that covers most of it for everybody. Okay, so then just by way of the things that me and Amy discussed, another update we have, I know there's been a lot of concern with the Taylor Gardens. And so me and Amy were able to attend the Housing Authority meeting they had on Monday. It went really well. We were able to hear the concerns of the citizens there. And I'm meeting with Taylor Gardens on a regular basis. Their staff is awesome there. They've been super helpful with me and cooperative with me. And so we're going to be working on that issue for some of our Ballpark neighbors that are having those issues.
I'm super glad you followed up on that, Detective Fallows, because I think some people, they're part of the Neighborhood Watch Facebook group. They see that stuff go by. And it's really good to hear that, people are coming together to address it. It's not just people are completely unheard and this is just like getting posted out there and nobody does anything and nobody cares. It's like, actually, we've taken quite a few steps.
Absolutely. Yeah. And your concerns are valid, and we want to make sure that we are definitely helping to mitigate as much as we possibly can. And so, and I think that's both from the community side of things, the Taylor Gardens side of things, and of course the Salt Lake City Police Department side of things. So really it's a joint effort between all three of us. And I super appreciate the community and creating the Neighborhood Watch group. I appreciate the cooperation from Taylor Gardens, and I'm happy to be able to go out there and start working on those, on some of those problems. So that was super, that was a good step forward on that. And then I just wanted to actually real quick, I wanted to highlight something else as well that is super helpful or can be helpful. I'm going to put some other things up in the chat here, some other links. I just wanted to make sure it's separate from the no trespass sign one. So our SLC mobile app, I like to just kind of go over that real quick. Anybody who has not downloaded that, please do so. It's something where you can utilize it. Most people utilize it to report concerns regarding homelessness, but it actually is a pretty well-rounded app where you can utilize it for lots of different things. Trash in an area or graffiti. If there's like, of course, concerns regarding homelessness, any of those kinds of concerns. You can use it for like a speed watch if there's people that are just driving like crazy through your neighborhood with the new 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. If you see that people are just speeding, you can report that through there. It goes to the appropriate group, whoever it may be, and they, so if it's a speed issue, for instance, it'll go to our motor division. They'll review it, set up some kind of a operation in the area, and that's kind of how they're kind of driven by those stats. So super helpful if you haven't downloaded it. Just as a quick note though, and something super important to understand, just because it has been reported on the mobile app does not mean that the police department per se is going to know about it. So please still make a report if it's a crime. So if there's some kind of a crime going on, like a trespassing, something like that, you report it as a concern regarding homelessness on the mobile app. That's fine, and we really appreciate that. That is helpful. But more so, please report it to the police department, because they do not cross reference. So it does not count as a crime statistic in your area if it's not reported to the police directly. So just
I'm
wanted to highlight
super
that.
glad you pointed that out, Detective Fallows, because I think some people are confused about like, why is crime data decreasing or whatever,
Right.
when if you think you've taken care of it and you think you've submitted something to the SLC mobile app and therefore it's contributing to crime statistics, my understanding is that it is not, because the SLC
is.
mobile app diverts to city staff, and they can refer something from that collection of data into crime statistics, but it doesn't go to crime statistics directly. And
Correct.
your point is so valid, that our coverage of our neighborhood is driven by data, and it's driven by police data, right? So thank you so
Exactly.
much for pointing that out.
Yes, and we have to have a case number, and something I will highlight as well, it's really helpful, is our online reporting system. It's something simple. It takes a few minutes to make a report. It absolutely 100% counts towards the crime data, because you are instead of basically calling an officer, you're just going online and creating a report. And that is the SLC PD. That's the third link or the second link that I put up in the chat. So it's a super helpful tool to utilize if I understand officers can't always get there quick, and can be super frustrating. But if it's just something simple like, hey, I need to report this vandalism that I don't really have too much suspect information on, or a theft or something like that, just jump on our website and do a quick little report, and it will be added to those do go to the crime stats. So are there instances where we'd use one versus the other? Absolutely. So if it's just something where maybe there's like a tent in an alleyway or something like that, and you want to just get services out to that individual, then you can just use the SLC mobile app. But if it's something where you're like, hey, I want a police response now, and I want them to respond out now, then you would want to call our non-emergency dispatch line, or of course, if it's an emergency, then call 911. So I guess basically look at that. If you want an immediate police response, then just call dispatch or call 911. If you just kind of want the city to be aware of it, and just to give you an idea, I get some of that data, and I have meetings every Thursday where we go over the data that we get from the SLC mobile app. We create plans on how to mitigate it or deal with the issue. Sometimes that is getting police involvement, but again, it doesn't go towards, it's different than a crime stat. So if you need an immediate police response, then please call our dispatch, because that will take care of that. It's a great question. And then I'm just going to highlight, I wanted to also highlight a couple of things. Our officers have been doing some really great work in the Ballpark area, especially our East Side Bike unit. Amy's super familiar with them, Sergeant Christensen and his squad. They have been doing phenomenal work, and so much so that I really wanted to highlight some of their work that they've done, even just over the last couple of weeks within the Ballpark neighborhood. So number one, they've made multiple felony arrests, which is just, and I mean like more than average. They're doing awesome on that. Secondly, in the last 2 weeks, they've taken 4 guns off the streets out of the Ballpark area, which it's positive. It could be looked at as negative, I guess, but to me, it's a positive. The police they're out there being proactive. They got the guns off the streets. To me, that's a super, super proactive, awesome thing they did. And then year to date, and I would say about 90% of the time is probably spent in the Ballpark area. Year to date, they've made 118 felony arrests. They've confiscated, or they've taken 8 firearms off the streets, and they've taken more than 14 pounds of drugs off the streets year to date. So they are working super hard in the Ballpark area. They're doing a great job, and they are certainly, working hard to help mitigate the issues throughout that area.
Josh Blankenship has a great question as well. I know there was a drug number that was floating around for a while, a hotline specifically that you could call about active drug use or drug dealing in your neighborhood. Could you speak about how that number fits into the scheme of who to call when and why?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, if you're suspecting that it is like an ongoing drug issue, like someone dealing out of a home, something like that, it's in your neighborhood, then I would definitely do our drug tip line. Sometimes that tip line, it gets full, the voicemail or however they take it. So if that's the case, you can text as well. There's a text number that's on our website. But if it's something where it's happening now, then you could probably just call, you can call our dispatch as well and report a drug dealer, whatever you might suspect it to be. And we can come and respond to that as well. So I guess that might be, if it's something where you're like, man, this is a constant problem and it's happening all the time and people are, 18 cars are pulling up to this house and leaving within an hour. This is not normal. Grab some pictures, grab some video if you feel comfortable doing that, you feel safe doing that, and you can submit the tip. If you do that, you'll probably want to text so you can send the videos and stuff. But otherwise, if it's like, oh, there's a drug dealer in my neighborhood walking around, I see him going up to different people, then maybe give us a call so we can respond out. Because it kind of goes more immediate response compared to, a longer term response. So that'll be the difference essentially. No, the number that is not the number you text. I can pull it up real quick and I'll put it in the chat, but and then I wanted to highlight one other thing that we were able to do in the Ballpark neighborhood, and this was 2 days ago. I'm getting this number for you guys. Our officers, so as you guys know, our numbers are down still. We're in a very busy time. So these officers were able to create a kind of like a basically like an overtime op or whatever you want to call it, where they're doing it in their off time. And several officers came out and did that specifically for the Ballpark area. They made 51 contacts with citizens, 2 arrests. They saturated the areas of Major Street and the 300 West neighborhoods along the 1500 South and Paramount Avenue in those areas. And then they also did an operation in the area of 9th South and State Street, where they made an additional 17 contacts and an additional arrest. So again, it's just a highlight of our commitment to the Ballpark neighborhood of trying our best to, just with what we have right now, to be able to help mitigate the issues in the Ballpark neighborhood and help kind of just cut down on some of the problems, that are popping up. And so I'm super proud of our officers and the hard work they've put in on these overtime ops and our East Side Bike Unit. They've been working really hard. I know a lot of my business owners, if you guys are emailing me or texting me and saying, hey, there's a problem, I rely on them a lot to respond out and kind of help out where they can. So they're super useful, and they care a lot about the neighborhood, and they show it just through their hard work. So those are the things I really wanted to highlight. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to try and get this number. I don't know why it's being. Let me see if this will work. Hold on.
Well, thank you so much for your thoroughness, Detective Fallows. That was really helpful. I know we'll be interested in hearing further follow-up about what happens to that loading dock shooting. That was a really exceptional experience for our neighborhood. So appreciate it. Any other questions for Detective Fallows? I know we've got some 300 West business owners on this call, residents. I know people are perfectly happy to put it in the chat too, but just want to give folks the opportunity. All right, well, thank you, Detective Fallows.
Absolutely. I'm going to put that number. Oh, Dennis got it. There we go.
Dennis did get it. Thank you.
Thank you, good sir.
All right. I am looking for. I don't see a name coming up, but oh, Christina, let's see.
I'm here. Hello.
All right. Hello. I feel like your presentation might dovetail really nicely with Detective Fallows.
Okay.
I was really excited to hear. So Christina's here to discuss the downtown/Ballpark ambassadors. I was really excited to hear that a new contract had been, or that there's a new a new group that's managing the downtown ambassadors because I hadn't had some success with them before, or it's had some non-response. So Christina, would you like to talk about changes, hours of operation, the geographic area that we can expect you guys to pop up in? And also, you know, I realize you yourself are not a downtown ambassador, so you could explain who you are and why you have a stake in the program.
Of course. I have a little presentation about our boundaries and kind of what we do, but to start off, I think I'll introduce kind of who we are and where the downtown ambassadors came from. So they're managed by the Downtown Alliance. We started out in 2018 with the Downtown Ambassador Program, primarily focusing on the downtown district itself. And so we started out with 6 ambassadors there and have since then grown the program. We are now actually covering Ballpark, Central City, North Temple, Rio Grande. I'll get into that a little later in the presentation, but we're excited to be in the Ballpark neighborhood. We were previously contracted with a provider named Street Plus. They weren't meeting our needs, so we really took a hard look over this last year to see how could we better the service that we have. So we decided to switch the contract up, and we are now contracting with a provider named Block by Block. So they're across the nation, they're in several states and run a very similar program in many cities across the US. We're really excited about them. They've been with us now for about 2 months, and we've seen tremendous success already. A lot of training that has gone into our ambassadors, and they're hitting the streets. You've probably seen them around town, but they're excited and they're eager to help. So if I can share my screen, I'll go into the presentation. Let's see.
We made you a co-host, so you should have extreme powers over Zoom. So
Wonderful.
extreme.
Let's see. Oh, I can't. There it is. Let's see. Share. Start this over. All right. All right. Can everyone see that?
It looks terrific.
Perfect. All right, downtown ambassadors. So you've seen them. Their bright yellow shirts are hard to miss, but they work in the neighborhood to make sure everyone's safe and welcomed. Our primary service are safety and outreach services, business connections, hospitality escorts, directions, and special event information. Some of those are self-explanatory. The first 2 are not as much, so I'll go into those a little more in depth. But first, I wanted to go over our boundaries. So like I said, we work in the downtown. This was our first neighborhood that we hit. So it's a little larger than most of our others just because we do cover the entire business district. The next one is Rio Grande, North Temple, and then your neighborhoods, the Ballpark and Central City neighborhoods. So for Ballpark, we go from State Street to 300 West, 1300 South to 1700 South. For Central City, 200 East to 500 West, 600 South to 900 South. We're Tuesday through Saturday, noon to 8:30. So we are hitting those evening hours, which I think is very helpful to this neighborhood because I think there is a lot going on during those evening hours. So we're excited to be out here during those times. We also picked these boundaries specifically because we were seeing a lot of hotspots, a lot of calls for service, both with SLC Mobile App and with PD. So we really kind of connected the 2 to see where we could be the most effective in your neighborhood. And this is what we're landing on. So about our services, safety and outreach. So we really use our visibility to deter unwanted behaviors, to build relationships. People know us. They're excited to see us. They really want to connect with our team. And so we're able to make those referrals into services quite easily when they are ready to move on to a new place. We're consistent with our engagement. So we will see someone 3 times a day. And for those 3 times, we will ask them if they're ready to go into services, if we can connect them to a shelter, if we can connect them to another option. So we'll really talk to everyone very consistently. We're not law enforcement, but we will respond to the community's concerns and provide any resources that we can. The next one is business connections. So we really go door to door, saying hello to everyone, connecting with businesses in our areas. We really want to provide resources to everyone, including the businesses. So that might be educating them on the SLC Mobile App, on any resources that we have from other partners, and connecting them with like the SLC PD business community liaison. So I've written up some questions as well that we often get asked about our services. And so I think this could be helpful for the group to know, just to know what we're doing when we do see someone. So specifically, if we see someone who's on public or private and blocking maybe an entrance or camping, what we do is we go up to them, we engage, we introduce ourselves, and we see what we can provide with resources or alternative places. So if we can offer a resource center, a day center, a cooling center, and guide someone there, we will do that. If what they're doing is illegal or they refuse to go, we'll educate that person on what is illegal. So if they're camping, if they're blocking a private entrance, we'll let them know what consequences could occur if they remain in this location. If they become aggressive or refuse to leave, we'll disengage and we'll contact law enforcement. One of the biggest things that we do as well is we document every interaction that we have. This really helps us determine what our routes should be, what hotspots we're seeing, and we'll report this information back to SLCPD, to VOA outreach, to all of our community partners so we can get the right resources out there. Next one we come across often is, what do we do when we see an encampment? So when we do see something, we'll take a picture of the encampment and we'll document the location. We do this for our efforts so we know where areas are and we can determine where to send our people, but we also do this for the Salt Lake City Mobile App. We'll post it in there so we can get every resource we can out there to an encampment. We'll go up to the encampment, we'll engage with them, tell them about local ordinances, and again, consequences if they remain in that area. We offer resources and we try to make any referrals that we can right then and there, and we'll often go back several times a day to see if we can connect them. If the encampment is not compliant, they don't want to move, they don't want to leave, we'll also connect back with VOA Outreach, Salt Lake City PD, to see if we can connect other resources to them. If someone's acting out or is in crisis, we often see this around. People are screaming, people are in crisis or need additional assistance. We'll assess the situation. Our ambassadors are trained in de-escalation tactics, so they will try to go up to someone and de-escalate the situation, but they will disengage if they feel like they could be harmed or they're harmed to someone else. We'll contact MCOT or SLCPD if necessary to get further assistance out to that situation. And again, we'll document the interaction. If we observe something that's illegal, drug dealing, property crimes, drug use, we'll again observe the situation, we'll take pictures if necessary, and then we'll call SLCPD too for further assistance. And I also include my contact information and our ambassador dispatch line. I'll put this in the chat too if you're unable to get it on the screen, but we're really here just to be the eyes and ears of the community, and we're just another set of tools and resources to get people into a better place. But I can answer any questions that may come up, and I can also answer them in the chat too.
Hey there, Fraser. Looks like you have a question.
Yeah, so my name is Fraser Nelson. Thank you so much for this great improvement. I'm excited to see these folks in the neighborhood. And I'm wondering if we can see them in my part of the neighborhood, which is around Jefferson Park. It feels like there's a lot of course, people camping, using the park as they're welcome to, but sometimes spending the night, and also kind of underneath the underpass there. So maybe that area north of 13th, there are a lot of us on the call who are from that area wondering, how can we advocate to expand the coverage area? What do you suggest? Thanks so much. I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, great question. So our areas are determined with the help of Salt Lake City. So we're funded through Salt Lake City. So I think Allison might be on as well. But this was really an effort that was made by them to request this service in this specific area. And we agreed to expand our services into this ballpark neighborhood specific to these boundaries. And so that would have to be a request towards the city to expand our boundaries, but we definitely want to be good neighbors. But that is how this came about with these boundaries.
I've asked Allison to unmute if she'd be willing to talk to who would be the appropriate party in the city to advocate to about this.
Yeah.
Sorry, apparently I don't have any lights on. Yeah, our team, the Heart team, is the one to advocate for. So I'll take note of your thoughts and take it back to the team and we'll discuss it and let you know. So thank you for that input.
Great. Looks like most of the questions were about expansion of the boundaries. I guess I'm going to ask the same question that I was posing to Detective Fallows about, so your call statistics for the Ballpark ambassadors don't contribute back to our crime statistics or anything like that.
They do not. So if there is a crime occurring, I would recommend that you call Salt Lake City PD. If you see that someone is in need of resources, if someone actively comes up to you and says, I'm looking for shelter, I'm looking for resources, we'd be a great person to call and we can definitely connect with someone rather quickly.
Looks like David around 300 West and 1500 South is curious how often he can expect to see ambassadors.
Yeah, so we are out every day, Tuesday through Saturday. We try to hit the entire boundary every single day. So at least once a day, you should be able to see someone. We often try to mix it up. So if there are hot spots that we know of where people are gathering, we'll have folks go out there several times a day, but we try to at least hit the entire boundary in that day so we can make note of where people are moving.
Great. And I hope it's not, hope you can offer some guidance, but I often use the ambassadors in conjunction with the non-emergency number, especially for an encampment where I can tell some illegal behavior is happening, but maybe not 100% of the time. And if I call non-emergency and hear like, actually, there's a pretty long wait right now, I will sometimes call the ambassadors to see just who could get there first, because it can be pretty difficult to deal with encampments in residential areas.
Definitely. We're a good first step because we will often call SLC PD too if we see illegal activity or if there's a need to get them on scene. We will take the initiative and do that. We're a good first step to see what the situation is. Can we get folks connected to another resource? Or do we need to bring additional resources out to them? If there is an encampment, maybe there's a need to call BOA Outreach. If there's a need to call SLC PD or other partners to really just get the right resources out there. So we are a good first step, not the only step. And then definitely if there is an emergency, continue to call 911 or Salt Lake City PD dispatch.
Okay, great. Any more ambassador questions? I will say that I have had a much more positive experience with the downtown ambassadors since you switched companies. It's night and day. Still have serious problems, but it's gratifying to at least have somebody listen on the other end and understand that we need some help.
Definitely, and we welcome the feedback too. If there's good stories or bad stories, we welcome it all. And so I'll put my contact information in the chat as well, and feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Looks like Jim has a question about timing. It looks like, Jim, they are available until about 8:30 Tuesday through Saturday. And I have called them as late as, after 8 and still received a response. But I'm not going to disagree with you that there's real action that happens on 300 West after 8:30. Do you have any, I'm asking you to unmute just in case you have any follow-ups or anything like that. But okay. All right. Thank you very much, Christina. We look forward to using your services. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, Todd Anderson. Welcome to the Ballpark Community Council virtual meeting, along with Central 9th. And Kathy,
Hi.
nice to see you as well.
Yeah,
Thanks
I'm
for
gonna
being so responsive.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm going to just quickly introduce our team, which is Todd and myself. We work for Salt Lake City Economic Development, specifically on ARPA funding for our department. So we have this community grants program, which Todd will present on. We want to be cognizant of your time, so I'm just going to keep my intro brief. For those business owners that are online, this will be helpful information for you. But for residents that are online, if you can help us with spreading the word about this community grants program. It is a resource. It is money for small businesses, arts and artisans, and nonprofits. The nonprofits have 2 pathways to apply. Todd will explain that, but we'd like to make sure everyone in every part of our city, in our metropolitan Salt Lake City, has information about this program, has access, and Todd will tell you about the great technical assistance program that he's head of, where we can make
I
sure that
apologize. Let me interrupt you just for a second, Kathy. I think there are a lot of people on this call that understand the acronym ARPA, but I think it'd be helpful just to bring,
Sure.
just to level the playing field and define that and understand, like, why did this source of funding exist in the first place?
Sure, I'm happy to tell you that. And so I was going to let Todd do most of that, but ARPA, it does stand for the American Rescue Plan Act, which is a bill signed into law March, I think it was 13th, 2021, and that allowed funding to happen to state and local municipalities for recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and the related shutdowns. So this funding has reached Salt Lake City. It did a while back. There was an extensive process to determine where all those funds should go, part of which was set aside to go to the community grants program. That was $4 million. $2 million of that community grants program came to our department. $2 million has gone to community and neighborhoods, and they are administrating a direct service program to their nonprofit partners. So Todd will tell you all about ours, but I'll be available to answer some questions in the chat or any questions that come up during the meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. As Kathy said, this is the Salt Lake City Community Grant Program, and we have $2 million available in funding. Who can apply? It's small businesses, artists, artisans, creatives, and nonprofits. They can apply for grants up to $50,000. As she said, nonprofits has 2 tracks. If a nonprofit themselves were affected, through their operations or employees by the pandemic or the shutdowns, they can apply basically as small businesses themselves. And they can apply for up to $50,000. Nonprofits can also go through a second track if they want to act kind of as a sub-recipient or a pass-through of funding, if they want to offer COVID-19 recovery programming for arts or small businesses in their area. Like an example would be, maybe like a Chamber of Commerce. That's a nonprofit that works with small businesses in an area. So if they had an idea of how they could do programming to help recover these businesses, they could apply for that up to $100,000. Just a note, we expecting a lot of applications. We actually opened today. I think got about already 40 applications in one day. So we're expecting that applications will exceed the available funding. So, funding is limited. I'll just make a note of that. So who is eligible to apply? To be eligible, you need to be physically located and licensed to do business in Salt Lake City and be in operation before January 1st, 2020. We do have an exception if you're home-based, artist or musician, a business license is not required. Less than 50 full-time employees, and you need to show you're negatively impacted by the pandemic or related shutdowns. There'll be specific documents you can submit to show that, and I'll talk about that in several slides. There's a couple more legal rules. You can't be in pending litigation or legal action, restricted from the use of federal funds. And all the following ones are more just to say, these funds are not for big multinational businesses like Amazon, or, big chain stores. This is for smaller businesses that were hit the hardest by the pandemic. And also the business can't be owned by a city employee, elected or appointed official. Some exceptions to these rules: artists must reside in Salt Lake, must have been a professional artist before January 1st. Home-based businesses are eligible, but they must reside in Salt Lake City. Food trucks are also eligible. They either have to have their owner reside in Salt Lake, or the business uses a commissary or an inventory kitchen based in Salt Lake City. I already talked about nonprofit organizations, so I'll skip over that. How can you use the grant funding? You can use it for wages, payroll, and benefits, costs to retain employees, such as bonuses and retention pay. Those have a couple different additional requirements. So we'll ask on the application if you request funding for that to give a little more information. Mortgage, rent, utilities costs, COVID-19 prevention, such as barriers, dividers, vaccines, testing, one-on-one business counseling, or other operating costs. That could be like supply chain costs, inventory costs, that kind of thing. ARPA is pretty specific on ineligible uses of the funding. You can't use it for depositing into pension funds. You cannot use it for debt servicing or replenishing rainy day or stabilization funds or other personal enrichment activities. Basically means you can't use it on personal items or travel. It has to be connected to the business. The timeline for the use of funds is also pretty ARPA specific. Grant funding can only be used for costs incurred after March 3rd, 2021. It's this specific date, as Kathy said, this is in March 2021 was when the American Rescue Plan Act was passed by the federal government. So that was basically essentially was saying the CARES Act was over, and now it's the American Rescue Plan Act to help with long-term COVID recovery. So that's why it's that specific date. All funds must be spent by December 2024 with receipts of eligible uses of the funding provided no later than December 31st, 2026. Some of the required documents we're asking in addition to the application: 2 federal income tax returns, one of those being pre-pandemic and one post-pandemic. So this is how you'll show your impact. If, from 2019 to 2020 on those 2 tax returns, we can see that you had a 30,000 reduction in revenue, then we can know that the $30,000 you're requesting, did happen. So that's how we can kind of verify that. I will mention if your business files 990 EZ returns, that has a little bit less information on those tax returns. So just let us know and we can, work with you and get an alternate document from you to show your impact. A signed copy of your IRS W-9, current copy of your Salt Lake City business license. Again, if you're home-based artist or musician, that's not required. And if you need a new copy of your license for any reason, you can contact the business licensing division. They'd be happy to help you out. A form of ID, such as driver's license or passport. This is more a requirement intended to prevent fraud. We've talked to other cities that have had bots that just automatically apply fraudulently to grant applications. So we just want to make sure that you're a human and you're a business owner in reality. So that's the reasoning why we asked for that. And then just a couple other situational documents. If you're a sole owner, proprietor, you're requesting wages or benefits. If you received additional funding, like from PPP or EIDL, we'll just ask you to submit some documents related to that. Next slide, I'll have Kathy go over this slide.
I think we're getting pretty into the weeds. If there are business owners on this call that are interested in this level of detail, I don't mean to.
I was going to suggest that. I've put the link to our program on the chat, and Todd and I have our contact information there. We're happy to take, individual calls or emails regarding the program, and we can send you the slide deck, and it's available along with a full training video. And so really, we just want to make sure that the word gets out on this program. So we're happy to end here and just tell you, for more information, you can reach out to us. We're happy to get the information to the right people.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I want to be respectful of time, and I can put a lot of information and also some upcoming trainings that you can attend in the chat right now.
Application dates look like they're the 1st through the 30th, Whitney. So, get busy.
Yeah, so we launched today. It was really exciting, but we're going through September 30th. I will note it's not a first comes, first serve. So, you can take your time and apply through any period of that. And we'll look at applications, not based on which ones came in first. So.
All right, thank you very much. I know there's some folks on here who are disappointed that physical damage to their business wouldn't be applicable for, it doesn't seem like physical damage to businesses would be applicable for this funding mechanism.
Correct. This is strictly COVID recovery.
Yeah, I guess my point was that homelessness and unsheltered populations went up during the pandemic, and they certainly went up in the Ballpark neighborhood and in Salt Lake City, right? We can demonstrate that through data. There have been plenty of studies that have shown that locally and with the state of Utah. And a lot of the businesses that are on 300 West or 1300 South experience some damage by folks who were either personally experiencing homelessness or demonstrably prey on people experiencing homelessness. And so they're wondering, would there be a way to spin the application to say, we had a big uptake in physical damage, broken windows, et cetera, because of what is an effect of the pandemic?
So let me be more specific. So COVID recovery meant recovery because you were forced to close down by the federal, state, and local governments. So the recovery we're recovering from is the forced closure of your business, not really the overall health pandemic, at least not for the small businesses. There is funding available through community and neighborhoods for nonprofits to help in those areas. So to address the public health concerns, to address the mortgage and rent issue that happened. So all of those other subcategories, they're offering nonprofit assistance. So the nonprofit groups that deal with those issues will receive, can apply for that funding and then show how they're going to direct those funds to those communities who were impacted in that way by COVID. That just doesn't happen to be our division or what we're focused on.
I super appreciate that clarification. And I know a bunch of the businesses on this call are, not nonprofit, they're for-profit businesses, but that doesn't mean that their needs are any less significant. And I know there are folks on here who had tens of thousands of dollars of damage done. Right. So it sounds like we're looking for a different funding mechanism than for those folks who signed on than what you're talking about. So right. I appreciate you've been very clear. I appreciate that. Okay. Moving right along, who is online from the city? So are there any other questions for our lovely community grant folks? Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for bothering to sign on and explain to the community what's up. I appreciate that. It's helpful. Let's see, Fraser's asking if there's a link for the grant program. Would you mind throwing that link into the chat, Todd or Kathy?
Yes, it was in as soon as I started speaking. So
sorry.
It's at the top if someone scrolls up, but I can post it again.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh yeah, I see. Great, great. Okay. I am looking for Josh, our representative for District 5 from the mayor's office. I thought I saw him sign on earlier. I do not see him anymore. Josh, would you like throw your hand? There you are. You did exactly what I was going to ask you to throw your hand up. Thank you. You've been made
Thanks.
co-host. You have all the powers.
Thanks. Let me put my hand down digitally. My name is Josh Raboyo. I'm a community liaison, the community outreach team in the mayor's office. And I was at the Kensington Street Festival. It was great to be out there and see so many, get to meet a lot of the community members out there, as I'm now a community liaison in District 5 and also liaison for District 1. So I have a few updates. I was asked by Will Becker in our transportation division to share some information about the Kensington Byway project, which if you were at the Kensington Street Festival, you saw them doing outreach for that project and getting public input on that project. Was just that public engagement process just started. So I'll just going to share a little bit of information about it. I know that Will has said he will be on the meeting next month to give a more comprehensive update on that. But for now, so what he has shared with me is that so the project is underway, and that is the study area currently is on Kensington Avenue, going from West Temple to 1400 East, where it'll connect to another neighborhood byway. And basically, a neighborhood byway is a neighborhood focused street to create a convenient and pleasant route for people using active modes of transportation, encouraging safe travel speeds, discouraging vehicle traffic cutting through to get to other main arteries, and just focusing on mostly on the local traffic of people that live on those streets, providing safe crossings and connecting people to their destinations. And so to identify the needs along Kensington, the city has started a project website to take a short survey, and also there's an interactive map where you can leave comments and also see other people's comments and like them. And you can also sign up for the newsletter on that project. And so the funding for Kensington Byway comes from the CIP, Community Improvement Program grants requested by the Ballpark Community Council and Liberty Wells Community Councils, and a Transportation Alternatives Program grant. So that's where the funding from that comes from. And
Thanks,
the
Josh.
phase one,
We originally applied for that grant in fall 2019. And so that gives you an idea of how long a CIP grant might take to get to fruition. But we've also had other CIP improvements made to our neighborhood before, the repaving and realignment of 1700 South between State and the train tracks also took place there, or took place via that mechanism.
right. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that information, Amy, on that link. And I did share the link also from the transportation page on that. And speaking of CIP, the CIP grant application opened today, September 1st, is open through September 30th for the fiscal year 2023, 2024. And that, excuse me, sorry, I'm just gonna share that into the chat as well. And as you said, that process can take some time, but over time, there are a number of great improvement program projects, that have been implemented in our neighborhoods. And so take a look at it as a community council, if there's anything in mind for applying for a CIP grant this cycle that is underway. And there are also some workshops for that happening on September 15th and the 21st at the Sorensen Center. And then in general, when we're talking about surveys and feedback and public input, we have a website that Civic Engagement put together, the feedback website, which I just pasted in there. All the different current surveys that are out there. One of them that there's been a lot of engagement on, as well as the Housing SLC, which is the 5-year housing plan to guide policies and for the city related to housing. And so that survey is still active, and there's a film screening at the main branch of the library on September 8th related to affordable housing that seems really interesting to engage with. And let me just, they're throwing a lot of links here, but sorry about that. At that website there for Housing SLC, find the information for that upcoming film screening and other upcoming engagements for that plan. So that's about, also this week, the mayor with park rangers, newly announced park ranger program was announced, focusing primarily first on the hubs of Liberty Park, Jordan Park, Pioneer, and Fairmont Park. And so
Josh,
more
we only
information.
have like 1 or 2 tiny pocket parks in our neighborhood. Could you suggest how we might be impacted by the park ranger program?
Yeah, so they're still building out their team. They have currently 13 rangers, including one of their supervisors. They're still hiring a program manager who's going to oversee that and help direct their resources and ask for funding. The most recent budget cycle included more funding for park rangers to increase their numbers. And so I know that they have been getting requests for some of the other parks in the city that have seen some issues. That you mentioned Jefferson Park, you mentioned some of the other parks. I know I've worked with the North Temple community, and they talk about Madison Park, and those have come up. And so I'm going to make sure I'll forward those requests and questions to the Public Lands Department and see where they're thinking that can go. They're also going to, once there's a program manager in place, that person will make themselves available to the community councils to engage and come to meetings, and you can direct questions to them there as well, but I'll take note of that. And that's basically what I had on for updates and projects going on currently.
Great, thank you. And we'll be happy to do a deeper dive into the Kensington Avenue Byway with Will. Saw a lot of people stop by the interactive tent on Saturday and say that they wanted lighting. I know as a community, one of the things that we're interested in engaging with is building a coalition to try to actually extend the crossing time on State Street. We understand that State Street is not a city-owned street, it's UDOT. But wouldn't this be a great opportunity to show UDOT the community is coming together, making improvements to this road, and your crossing times are shorter than the federal average? Wouldn't this be a great time to think about adding some seconds onto that so people can cross safely in time, especially kids going to elementary school or to community college? Wouldn't that be great? So if anybody wants to participate in that effort of gathering stakeholders, that's something that I know several of us are interested in doing. All right, any more questions for Josh? Okay.
Thank you. I'll leave my contact info in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Hello, Councilmember Mano. Would you like to give us to what's happening currently in City Council?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I was just messaging you before you allowed me to unmute that I think the crossing time on State Street is a great idea. I'd love to sign on to that letter if you feel like that would be helpful. So
great, thank you.
That effort and help connect with folks at the state. The biggest thing that's happening in City Council right now is that we approved a couple bonds, which are improvements for parks and open space. The majority of that money will go to that. One of them is a general obligation bond, and that means that it'll be on your ballot this November, and that's something that you, the voters, get to decide, or we, the voters, get to decide whether or not that will be approved. But the idea is for several parks throughout the city, notably not, I guess, close to the Ballpark neighborhood, but the Fleet Block Park is one. Liberty Park also has some funding for improving the playground. But there's also a lot of funding in there for the Glendale Regional Park, which is kind of being discussed as a Liberty Park for the west side. Liberty Park scaled regional attraction park that would be on the west side. So that is, and then other improvements for different parks throughout the city. Those are, that's going to be on the ballot this November, but there's also a bond that we approved, which is a sales tax bond. So that doesn't increase, that's not an increase in your property taxes like the general obligation bond would be. It is paid for by future sales tax receipts. And that is another huge investment in mostly open space, but also, well, the cemetery is part of the open space, but one of the big improvements there is cemetery roads. So
Councilmember Mono, could you address when we say sales tax receipts?
So
is food and groceries, are they exempt from the tax increase?
So there's no sales tax increase.
I'm sorry.
It's a property tax. So it's people that own property is where the increase for the general obligation bond will.
Got it. Thank you. I misheard.
Assessed on. The sales tax, we're at our ceiling per state law, so we cannot increase sales tax at all. But sales tax fluctuates, of course, with the market and how much people purchase of goods and well, in Utah, not services, but of goods. But we, as a city, assume that we know we will be getting sales tax for every year, every quarter. And so that's how we're basically taking a big loan out and repaying it back with the sales tax. The general obligation is a property tax one. And those are the two main ways that the city receives our revenue that we use for all the city services, including police and fire and everything else. So those are the two big things going on right now. I am working with the rest of the council to schedule some of the big and important land use issues that we've been working on. And so there's a lot of things. I know that that's been talked about a lot. Some of them are not ready for city council. So, but that's something that I expect will be hopefully coming up soon. And some of the things that we've been kind of sitting on for several years, and other things that we're waiting, that we've just got some updates on. So that is coming in the next little bit. We have, and I guess those are my kind of main updates. I'm happy to take questions if anyone has specifics.
Could you speak about when we could expect the Ballpark station area plan to hit city council? I know that's something that different folks on this call have been part of since
and I appreciate
for the past couple of years.
I appreciate everyone's engagement on that. I know that it's a better plan because of the work that people on this call have done. That should be ready soon. It's something that we just got transmitted within the last month. And so I, as vice chair of the council, I'm trying to move that as quickly as possible. It is large enough that we feel it's important to have our city council staff analyze it and do a staff report. For some of the smaller things, we'll move forward much quicker, but other things, once we get it in our office, we have a little bit of time where city council staff does their own independent analysis separate from the administrative staff. And that's just a check and balance of powers sort of thing. For kind of larger items, we want to make sure that there's nothing that we, the legislative body, might find as might flag that the administrative body would not. So I think because of that reason, because it's such a big kind of influential thing, we don't want to just rush it through. We want to make sure that the council staff has some time to analyze it. So it probably will not be September, but hopefully soon after that.
Great, thank you. That was informative. I'm still hoping that we might get a more readable version of the station area plan. It's 111 pages and was published in 9-point font. That's a little challenging, I think, for some people.
Yeah, I would encourage people to take a look at some of the maps in the plan. That's probably the most informative. City plan master plans are by definition spatial, right? We're talking about cities and spaces, and that's important, I think, so people can look at those maps. I think that's probably the most important and quickest way to kind of grasp the totality of that, but it certainly is, and purposefully so specific and gets kind of into the weeds with things.
Great, thanks. Anybody else on this call have some questions for the chat, questions for our council member? He can't make every meeting, so we really appreciate it when he can take time to join us. Crickets. I'll give people like a minute in case anybody is mid question, but feel free to put up your hands, people.
I'll throw a question out for the community that in the past I've done kind of what a lot of council members do, which is just put some kind of office hours at a coffee shop in the neighborhood. And I've done it in different coffee shops throughout District 5. Haven't been getting a lot of engagement. We've been doing them Saturday mornings. Wondering if there's a better way that you'd like me to sort of hold those meetings, if you don't find them helpful at all, or if a different time would be more beneficial, like a weeknight, maybe after work sometime. If you have thoughts on that, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know as we try and make sure that there's an opportunity for people to come and talk to me about whatever's on their mind, but don't want it to be at a time when it's hard for people to get to. I'll throw my contact information in the chat, which I assume most people already have, but feel free to reach out.
All right, we do have a great new coffee shop in the neighborhood, Honeysuckle Coffee Co., which occupies the space formerly occupied by Watchtower. Bless their name forever for turning that space into a workable space. We miss them. I'm sorry that they weren't able to be helped out by the current grant funding. Let's see. Got a message that went directly to me, but I'm not sure if it was meant to. Kelly, I'll let you ask your question directly if I can find your name. Kelly Morgan, that is. We've got a couple Kellys on the call. Probably I could be specific. Oh, I got a no thank you. No, we do not want to be unmuted. I apologize. Okay. All right, shortest Ballpark Community Council meeting ever, clocking in at 1 hour and 15 minutes. Oh, Liz has a general question. Please, let me find you, Liz. Please feel free to unmute and ask it. Hi, Liz.
There we go. Hello. Hi, thanks for holding this meeting. It's been very informative. I moved into the Ballpark area about 4 months ago, and it's been an adventure. So I have a question because I'm getting a little confused. So as I mentioned in the chat, I live right across from, I live on Mead Avenue, right across from the overpass. And there's a huge issue with encampments. It's nonstop. It's moved one day and then immediately, like 5 minutes after they're gone, they're back. And it's really, 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 really frustrating. So I see that there are about 5 resources here, and I just don't understand what's the best one to utilize because I reported it on the SLC app. And then when I did that, I got a report that the Heart Homeless Engagement Response Team is the best to facilitate. When I call the SLC non-emergency line, the last time I did that for something else that was more severe, it took 5 hours for cops to show up. And then there's also the ambassador dispatch and then the VOA community engagement liaison. So who and what am I supposed to be doing? Because I want to make sure that the stats are appropriately captured. But I find myself just getting frustrated and feeling like I am reporting things and nothing is really happening. So I guess I just need to better understand like what is the best way to go about this.
First of all, Liz, I'd really like to validate your frustrations. I think those of us who live a block or two from an encampment understand that they can be intractable at times, and it's really frustrating to feel like I'm doing all of the right things. I'm taking advantage of every opportunity, and yet I still have a group of drug dealers near me that's really intimidating me and preventing me from feeling safe leaving my home. I cannot tell you how much I relate to that situation, if I phrased that correctly.
Yeah, no, it's correct. I don't feel safe, period. Like, no.
Yeah, that's very hard, and really eats away at your empathy, doesn't it?
Yeah, I used to pride myself in being very empathetic, but I found my empathy is diminishing very quickly. So, and I don't want to be that way, but I would like to do something that's actionable, that is helpful. And I guess that's why I'm asking this question is what can I do?
Let's see, I just asked to unmute Dennis Ferris. Dennis, could you introduce yourself for newcomers? In what capacity are you speaking?
Absolutely. My name is Dennis. I work with VOA, with the Volunteers of America, as part of the Salt Lake City's mitigation team. So
what is, hold the phone. Sorry, I just want to like make sure that we're again leveling the playing field. So the Volunteers of America is a nonprofit, and the nonprofit works with Salt Lake City's homeless mitigation team. I don't think I said that correctly. Would you rephrase it?
You bet. Yes, that is correct. That we, VOA is a nonprofit organization, social service provider. And then, but we work very closely with all of those other partners. So Liz, all of those other resources that you mentioned, quite honestly, we are all communicating all day, every day. So any one of them is great. The Heart team, Allison Dupler is probably still on here as well. She and I work very closely together, and she is Salt Lake City's Heart team, the homeless engagement and response team. And then us combined with Detective Fallows from Salt Lake City PD, Joe with Salt Lake City's rapid intervention team. We are all working together to try and impact exactly what you're describing. I'm all too familiar with the space you're talking about. Know that it is on the list. We are prioritizing consistently on a daily basis, trying to reprioritize all the issues in the city and what resources we have to impact them, but definitely well aware of not just what's happening in that space where you are, because it is definitely a concern, but how repeatedly it occurs. So yeah, you're right. So know that it is still on the list to be recleaned yet again, and trying to bring together everyone. Still working on expanding, of course, like we talked earlier, the downtown ambassadors to perhaps hit that space in the future. But in the meantime, there was additional funding for the Salt Lake City Police Department to create mitigation squads, specifically in the areas surrounding the Salt Lake City-based homeless resource centers, to bring in squads of 6 officers to be able to impact any crimes that are occurring in that area specifically. So there are definitely a lot of things in the works, but yeah, I recognize that it's not going to give you immediate satisfaction there. Kelly's saying something. Would you suggest those who can? So Kelly's asking in the chat for, would you suggest those who can take advantage of opportunities to volunteer with these resources? There are certainly plenty of opportunities to volunteer. Kelly, if you go to voaut.org, there is a get involved tab that will allow you to schedule either volunteering or donations. But Liz, wanted to make sure that, did you have any other questions? Is there any way that I can better talk to you? I'd love to actually come to your place if you'd like and chat with you there. And
yeah, no, that would be great. Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to understand what the chain of command is as far as me reporting these things, because like I said, I listed off 5 different things that have been mentioned. So what am I supposed to be doing then? Do I contact?
It all goes into the same pool.
Okay.
When you report it on SLC Mobile, it goes directly to the Heart team, who sends it to VOA. So we are all connected. And then we are, like I say, consistently working with PD and downtown ambassadors as well to be able to use whatever. We've got to be creative because there's never enough resources. So we've got to try and bring together whatever we can.
Okay. Okay. So I will follow up with you. I'll shoot you an email. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Anyone else on that note?
Pardon me, somebody asked me to unmute them and now I have to find them. There's a Steve Woolridge on the call who's definitely aware of some of these issues. I don't know whether to refer to you as Steve or Lieutenant. Mr. Steve Woolridge, how would you like to be referred to in the context of this call? And we can't hear you yet, although you are unmuted. Anybody? Oh, maybe connection problems.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Hello.
There we go.
Hello. Sorry about that. And my camera on my work computer isn't, well, I don't have a camera on my work computer. So you all can't see me, but I'm a Salt Lake City Police Lieutenant. I've been a Salt Lake City Police officer for 31 years.
Lieutenant Woolridge has spent quite a bit of time in the Ballpark neighborhood as the, I'm going to botch this, the charge officer. That's not the right term. Lieutenant Woolridge, would you correct me?
Sure. I was the Liberty Bike Squad sergeant for a number of years in District 5, 6, and 7 and citywide. And I've been a watch commander, and occasionally I'm still a watch commander citywide. I'm currently the training lieutenant. So in answer specifically to Liz's question, and although Dennis Ferris already hit up one of my favorites, which is the Salt Lake City Mobile App, which is always good for a variety of reporting different things that get channeled through the appropriate departments or resources. For criminal issues, there have been a shortage of officers and line staff across the department. Right now, we are using a lot of overtime, whether we want it or not, to ensure appropriate staffing for patrol responses. So those who have had the experience of waiting for hours for a police response, try not to be discouraged. I have been paying attention to the backlog. And so what that means is that we have a number of calls for service that are waiting, but with the mandatory overtime hours that our staff are being deployed in, the backlog has been greatly reduced. So anytime you see anything that looks like a crime, that also includes people that are on the private properties that have the white and red no trespassing signs. That's a trespass. We have the affidavit of trespass. We're authorized to enforce trespass on that property. If you see disorderly conduct, fighting, intoxicated persons, people that look like they have been passed out for a significant amount of time and they may be at risk of physical health, feel free to call the Salt Lake City Police Department through our 799-3000, or if it's an emergency, 911. And I am sure you'll get a much better response as far as timeliness that you've experienced in the past.
Thank you, Lieutenant Woolridge. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the mandatory overtime. I wanted to be sensitive to that issue. I know we're grateful to get response times down, but I really hope that doesn't have a negative effect on morale and drive people out of the department to other local departments that might have fewer requirements.
We'll see. The other thing is that being I have a moment, I'm also the chair of for the community outreach forum group in our strategic 5-year plan as we're putting it together. So at some point I'll be also probably through Sam Fallows, because he's your normal DCLO for this community council, but we are formulating a bunch of questions for analysis for our 5-year strategic plan that we are preparing for this next half a decade. So you'll be hearing more probably through Sam, but more information on that as we do analysis of what the community expectations are, and your group, along with the North Temple Community Improvement Group, which I have frequent contact with over the years, and all the other community councils and other business and other organizations throughout the city will be seeking your input, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Thank you, Lieutenant Woolridge. And I know that you are an active participant in the North Temple Neighborhood Community, I'm going to get it wrong, Community Alliance. And I know that you deal with these issues not only as a public safety official, but also as a city resident yourself. And you appreciate their complexity. Thank you. I put this in the chat earlier, but I was ashamed that I did not call out earlier that our state senator to be has joined us on this call tonight. That's really significant. We don't always get state level people on our call. I definitely wanted to give her the chance to speak up, especially since Lieutenant Woolridge gave her a nice transition in mentioning folks who might look intoxicated to the point that they have passed out. Senator Plum to be, would you care to bring in your expertise here? I'm asking you to unmute. Let's see if that works. There you
And
go.
of course, I have the video turned on just in time to have a dog walking behind my head on a couch. So
it brings authenticity to the experience.
Okay. Well, yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity to listen in and learn from you all and hear about all the different, I think, efforts that are happening, as well as the variety of struggles. And I think it's really something. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I appreciate the opportunity. I do, I work in the realm of trying to prevent preventable deaths. And so naloxone is the opioid overdose antagonist, meaning if someone's overdosed on an opioid, which is heroin or pills or fentanyl, it would behoove folks, if they feel like that's something they see, to help us get you trained if you want to have it. It's also okay if you don't. I understand, completely that everyone has different things. So maybe, Amy, what we'll do is we'll offer one time to join in, maybe 10, 15 minutes on one of your meetings, and do a brief, here's what an overdose looks like, here's how you use naloxone, and mail kits out to everyone that would like one. So let's consider that. But thank you all for, like I said, the opportunity, and for all of the engagement that you are bringing to your community.
Thank you, Senator Plum to be, or I don't know, you're already Jen Plum. I don't know how to construct that title.
Plum works just fine.
Yes. Dennis, you still have your hand up, and I'm not sure if it's a leftover hand or not. So I'm going to let you unmute if you'd like to ask our senator a question. Senator
Sorry,
Lee.
leftover. I'll fix it.
Understood. Okay, I'm going to, so
I'll come in for a sec, but sorry, Amy.
Oh, I was just going to say, I have been personally trained, and I would like to mention, if it is ever an issue, I carry naloxone, have it in my first aid kit, be happy to use it whenever anybody feels that it is necessary. I know what to look for. It's doesn't harm people. If you do CPR effectively, you have the chance to break a bunch of ribs. But naloxone, the worst thing that can happen is you tick somebody off. They'll wake up, they're endogenous, their body created opioids will no longer be there. And but maybe you have the opportunity to reverse an overdose. So just let me know. Anybody, most of you have my number through some mechanism. Happy to contribute. And yes, hosting a naloxone training would be awesome. Maybe we can even think about doing that in person, because it feels like such a touch activity, right? So I bet we know some folks who'd be willing to do that. Board member Daniel Thomas, would you like to contribute?
Hello, yes, and sorry for interrupting.
You are not.
Wanted to build on your prior point, and I hope that Darren is still within reach of his computer. So with this mandatory overtime, I've had candid conversations with a number of officers, and it seems like there's once again whispers of Salt Lake PD officers shopping around for better offers next door. Namely, West Valley PD is looking for as many as they can get and paying across the board $5 more per hour than we are. I know that the city council took care and improved officer pay not long ago, but is that on your radar? Is it on the city council's radar? Because that could be a disaster when we're already shorthanded.
Yeah, of course it is, Dan. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we've funded every request for additional officers that has come out of the department and the mayor's office, and we've also approved all of the increases in salary. I know that other agencies are also doing that increase, so we did a multi-year contract with the police union, and we're in, I believe, our second year of that. But that was but now other agencies have caught up, but we are committed to always staying at the top of the market. At least I am, and I believe my colleagues that are currently in office are committed to that. But we didn't have an opening for, we had like previously negotiated, but not a current opening for those union negotiations this year. So that did not come up in our plate this year. But yeah, of course, we're open to that, and we're always we want to be the top of the market for both police and fire. We have issues that don't happen in other cities, and we have both for both police and fire, and that's something that I want to make sure that we always are. And I think that's what I can't speak for the rest of the council, but no one opposed that the last time it came up, and I don't expect that we would when it comes up again.
And I haven't seen the data myself, but I think
I don't know that it's accurate that there are other agencies that are paying $5 more per hour across the board. I think that there are other agencies that are paying different amounts. But we did but I don't think that it's just a blanket $5 more than Salt Lake City for any city.
Right. No, and it wouldn't be a perfect match, but the discussions were essentially West Valley seemed like the best pay across the board, $5 an hour higher. And I was going to say, I believe it was repeated by multiple officers that we are now the eighth from the top for highest pay in the county.
It depends on which rank you're looking at, right? So starting pay, top out pay. So you can, we want to be the top of, I want us to be the top of the market for all positions, but that doesn't always work out because there's however many other agencies throughout the valley and throughout the state that are moving their salaries all the time. So we can't just keep, we don't change our salaries whenever anyone else does. We do it annually.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for engaging about these public safety issues. I know they affect a lot of us daily. All right. Looks like we're ready to wrap this up. Unless anybody has more to contribute. Senator Plum, you want to talk about any legislation that you're going to move forward with that we should be excited about? That's might be a little bit far away.
I was going to say, I'm excited to take as many folks up there with me to work on issues that matter. And I've got some brewing, so stay tuned.
That's a strong preview. I look forward to it. All right. Well, thank you all for your time tonight. This was a great meeting. I feel we sped through some stuff. It does sound like we're going to need to advocate for the neighborhood in terms of a way to help out some of the affected businesses on 300 West. But I'm really glad that we had state level people state level people anyway, and city level people on the call to hear those concerns and to also understand that the funding mechanisms that are out there are not meeting this need. And so I'll do whatever I can to advocate for those businesses, because we want small businesses to stay on 300 West and Paramount Avenue. We do not want it such that folks who can't afford to leave will. That will create a dangerous empty hole in the city. We want to keep people, long-term stakeholders in the neighborhood as best we can. So let's do what we can to advocate for each other. Thank you all for your time tonight. And I really hope some of you come out and pick up trash with us. It's satisfying kind of in the same way that pulling up weeds is satisfying. We have gloves, we have picker-uppers, and we have sharps containers because you'll find sharps. So, all righty. Have a lovely evening, y'all. And I'm going to stop the recording.